Claire Harper, a skilled and composed doctor, had always believed that her marriage to Ethan Wells would be peaceful and fulfilling. But one day, she received a shocking message on WhatsApp from an unknown woman. "Your husband is sleeping soundly in my arms." Attached to the message was a photo of Ethan holding the woman in bed. But instead of panicking or bursting into rage, Claire simply smiled and said nothing. She had already sensed Ethan's betrayal long ago, and she had quietly been preparing a plan of her own. With her usual poise and sharp intelligence, Claire invited the current fiancé of the other woman, Tyler Reed, to join her in one final showdown. She knew full well that stolen love never goes down easy. Claire was done playing nice. It was time to make both the cheater and the homewrecker pay the price for their deceit. What followed was a brilliant act of revenge, led by a woman who refused to be broken. This wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about power, pride, and proving that betrayal always comes with consequences. Dear listeners, if you love emotional, heartwarming stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's dive into a tale that will stir your heart and stay with you long after the last word. On their wedding anniversary, Claire Harper had gone out of her way to prepare an elegant dinner and a meaningful gift, hoping to surprise Ethan Wells, her husband. She never imagined it would become one of the darkest nights of her life. Claire, an doctor, had pulled strings and rearranged her schedule just to get the night off. The food had long gone cold, yet Ethan hadn't returned. He wasn't answering texts, and her calls kept going straight to voicemail. Outside, storm clouds rolled in. The wind howled, rattling the windows. Worried, Claire called again. Just as the phone was about to stop ringing, he picked up. "Don't wait for me. Eat without me. Room CT2, Building B 025. "You're at the hospital? Are you hurt?" she asked, alarmed by the familiar beeping of medical machines in the background. "Yeah, but don't come. I don't want you to." He hung up. Without a second thought, Claire grabbed her keys and rushed to the hospital. Her mind spun with worst-case scenarios. Was he in an accident? Was it serious? Head trauma? Chest injury? Why hadn't he called her first? Since they got married, Ethan had always contacted her right away whenever something happened, whether to him or someone in his family. Unless he got into some altercation again. He had a history of behavioral outbursts. Had he hit someone and now feared her scolding? When Claire arrived at the CT scan room and saw Ethan standing there completely unharmed, her tense heart finally settled. He was okay. That was all that mattered. But the scene before her caught her completely off guard. Her husband was gently wiping away the tears of a younger woman, his voice soft, his eyes filled with affection. "It's okay now. You're fine," he said tenderly, then lightly rubbed the back of her neck. "What the hell is going on here?" Claire demanded, storming up to them. Ethan froze for a second, but quickly collected himself. His tone was cold, annoyed. "Didn't I tell you not to come?" Text ignored, calls unanswered. And now this? The weather outside was wild, and Claire had nearly crashed on the way over. Yet he hadn't spared a single word of concern, no comfort, no explanation. Instead, he had the audacity to scold her. She felt like the one being blamed, like she was the problem. Her nose burned with frustration. The young woman beside him stood nervously, quickly trying to explain. "I'm so sorry, Claire. Please don't misunderstand. A sign fell on me outside my office because of the strong wind. Ethan just happened to be nearby and insisted on bringing me here." Claire looked more closely and saw only a faint bruise on the woman's shoulder, barely an injury. Yet the girl wore the expression of a frightened victim, as if Claire was the one acting irrational. The girl was undeniably pretty, fragile, and pitiful, the perfect damsel in distress. Claire recognized her as one of Ethan's co-workers. If she recalled correctly, her name was Natalie Shaw. Natalie's voice wavered with emotion as she glanced up at Ethan. Ethan, please explain things to your wife. I don't want to come between you two. It's not worth it over someone like me. But even as she said that, Claire noticed how Natalie's fingers subtly clung to the hem of Ethan's jacket. Ethan's expression darkened. There's nothing to explain. Claire, why are you always making a scene over nothing? He even called her by her full name, a sign he was truly irritated. He only did that when he was losing his temper. Claire's heart sank. Was she really misunderstanding? Or was this his guilty conscience acting out? This was the first time since they'd met that Ethan had treated her this way. And worse, it was all for someone who was essentially a stranger. Images of their suspicious closeness kept flashing in her mind. Every vague excuse, every strange mood lately, everything started to add up. She had no hard proof yet, but her instincts screamed something was off. Still, Natalie seemed shrewd. Confronting her head-on would only push things deeper into chaos. Claire steadied herself, swallowed her anger, and forced a calm smile. Looping her arm through Ethan's, she smiled sweetly at Natalie. I trust my husband. And as for you, don't worry, I'm not misunderstanding anything. The truth is, Ethan's just too nice. He never learned how to say no. Then, before Ethan could say a word, Claire turned and pulled him away with her. Only then did she catch the look in Natalie's so-called innocent eyes, no longer soft and sad, but flashing with spite. Suspicion had taken root in Claire's heart, and now it would only grow. After walking out of the emergency room, Claire Harper couldn't keep up the act anymore. She shook off Ethan Wells's hand and stormed toward the car. Heavy rain started to fall, soaking her to the bone, matching the cold knot tightening in her chest. Ethan chased after her, growing more impatient with every step. Claire, can you stop causing a scene already? Do you even realize what you just did? We're co-workers. How do you expect us to face each other at work after this? Claire pressed against the biting wind without looking back. Her steps quickened as she angrily yanked open the car door. Just as she was about to start the engine, Ethan snatched the keys from her hand. His face was stern, though his tone softened slightly. Babe, you've already embarrassed her. It's enough. You've made your point. It wasn't that big a deal. Why are you blowing this out of proportion? But her heart was already burning. How had this all suddenly become her fault? How had his betrayal turned into her being dramatic? Not once had he paused to consider how she might feel. Claire circled around and slid into the passenger seat, slamming the door with a thud. She buckled her seatbelt in silence as the wind began to ease, but the rain kept pounding down harder, drumming against the windshield in relentless waves. Her mood only darkened. Maybe she really had overreacted. Ethan was tall, handsome, composed, with a good job. Of course, a young woman might develop a crush. That wasn't unexpected. So long as he handled it appropriately, she could forgive a slip. Marriage wasn't about avoiding temptation. It was about resisting it. About loyalty. But the next words out of Ethan's mouth shattered every rational excuse she had tried to give him. She's just a kid, he said flatly. She's had a rough life. You don't need to be so harsh. She's innocent. Everyone at work sees her as a little sister. Claire turned to him, her eyes narrowing. Oh right, like a sister. So that's why you stroke her head and let her cling to your shirt like that? Do you think I'm blind? Flashes of their intimacy earlier came rushing back to her. She had tried to suppress the rage, but it flared up again, hotter than before. She has a boyfriend, Ethan snapped. Can you stop overthinking this already? His voice had shifted, sharper. His foot hit the gas, and the car sped up on the rain-slick road, making visibility even worse. Suddenly, Ethan slammed the brakes, jolting them both forward. Claire would have hit the dash if she hadn't buckled up. Before she could react, he rolled down the window and started shouting, "Are you trying to get yourself killed? Crossing like that without even looking?" Luckily, no one had been hurt, but the woman on the road looked shaken. Claire immediately got out to check. "Are you okay? Do you need to go to the hospital?" The woman, middle-aged and drenched despite a raincoat, shook her head furiously, bowing with apology. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Something urgent happened at home. I thought this would be faster. I wasn't trying to cross recklessly." She quickly mounted her e-bike and disappeared into the storm. Back in the car, Ethan's jaw was still clenched, his face stiff with fury. He said nothing to Claire, didn't look at her, but at least he slowed down. Outside, the sky was nearly black. Claire stared through the window, her thoughts spiraling. What if Ethan hadn't braked in time? What if the woman had turned around and blamed him? Or what if she had been some hot-headed man who didn't care who was at fault? What then? The consequences would have been terrifying. And all of it would have started because of Ethan's guilt. Because he lost control and chose anger as a weapon to intimidate her, scare her, and steer the conversation away from his infidelity. She could already hear what he'd say next. "You provoked me. You know how I am. I've told you about my behavioral disorder." He knew her too well. He knew how she thought. And he'd used that against her. That realization chilled her to the core. This man beside her, was he even someone she recognized anymore? For the sake of safety, Claire bit her tongue. She swallowed her anger, held back her words, ignored the lump in her throat. They rode the rest of the way in silence. When they got home, Ethan walked into the living room, and only then did his eyes fall on the untouched dinner and the cake on the table. That was when it hit him. Today had been their first wedding anniversary. That morning, Claire Harper had taken the day off from work. As soon as she woke up, she asked Ethan casually, "Do you have any dinner events tonight? If not, why don't you come home for dinner?" Ethan had immediately agreed. Claire thought maybe he was trying to surprise her, playing coy. But now she realized he really had forgotten. She had planned surprises for him with such genuine excitement. Looking back, it was laughable. "Babe, I'm sorry," Ethan said softly. "We both overreacted tonight." He tried to come closer to hug her, but Claire sidestepped. His expression twisted into guilt and frustration. "Okay, I'll reheat the food and cut the cake." They sat down and ate dinner together, but each was lost in their own thoughts. The food, reheated, lacked the warmth and flavour it had just hours ago, like their marriage. This was supposed to be their first anniversary, the so-called paper wedding. Was their relationship really that fragile, like a piece of paper? After her shower, Claire lay on the bed, pretending to be asleep. A little while later, she heard the familiar click of a pill bottle being opened on the nightstand. It was Ethan's melatonin. He took it every night before bed. Tonight was later than usual. Moments after, she felt the bed shift slightly. She froze, focusing on keeping her breathing steady. Ethan leaned in to kiss her. When she didn't react, he stopped. They both knew the other wasn't actually asleep. Eventually, his breathing slowed into a steady rhythm. Claire could tell he had drifted off, but she was wide awake. The doubt inside her gnawed like tiny needles, poking every inch of her heart. She knew what she had to do. Carefully shifting her body, she accidentally placed a foot over Ethan's leg. No reaction. Definitely asleep. Slowly, she reached for his phone beside him and tiptoed out of the bedroom, heading into the home office. Claire thought it would take effort to crack his phone passcode, But to her surprise, it hadn't changed. Her fingers trembled slightly. Was she being paranoid? Taking a deep breath, she told herself, "If I'm wrong, I'll apologize." She opened his phone and started searching. Miss you. Love you. Mwah. Sweet dreams. Hotel. Dinner. Nothing suspicious. At least, not in his messages with her. She checked his receipts. No unusual transactions. Nothing odd in his Venmo or bank apps. Even his wallet cash tally matched what she last saw. She opened his photo gallery. No suggestive pictures. Maybe she really was imagining things. Claire let out a slow, relieved breath. Then she tapped into the company group chat. She found Tessa Monroe's contact. Ethan had saved her full name. Everything seemed fine, until she realized something. Their entire message history was wiped clean, and notifications for the chat were turned off. That was it. That was the red flag. She shut her eyes tightly, but her mind wouldn't stop replaying the hospital scene. Ethan's indulgent gaze at Tessa, her clutching his sleeve, the resentful look Tessa gave when Claire pulled Ethan away. The weight on her chest felt like a boulder. There was no proof, no smoking gun, no starting point. Just a sickening hunch, and the suffocating feeling of betrayal. She was about to give up and turn the phone off when her eyes caught an app, the shopping app. She clicked into it on impulse, checking pending orders, items in checkout, delivery status. But again, nothing unusual. Maybe he's just that good at hiding it, she thought. Or maybe I really did misjudge him. Just as she was about to exit, her finger accidentally tapped into the order history section. That's when she saw it. A pair of women's shoes, purchased not long ago. Claire stared at the screen, a bitter laugh caught in her throat. Maybe I am overthinking it, she told herself. Then, by some reflex, she didn't even know why, her finger moved to the top left corner and tapped the tiny More menu. And there, clear as day, was the option Delete Order History. And somehow, like being pulled by invisible strings, she clicked it. A notification box popped up on the screen. Are you sure you want to delete this order? Deleted orders can be recovered from your desktop trash bin. A bad feeling rushed through Claire Harper. Her palms were sweaty as she booted up Ethan's laptop. The soft hum of the machine echoed in the quiet night, putting her on edge. She glanced toward the hallway, ears straining for any sound. It was silent. Still, unease prickled down her spine. She slipped off her shoes and tiptoed out of the office. Earlier, when she left their bedroom, she'd intentionally left the door slightly ajar. Now she leaned back against the hallway wall, her heart pounding so hard it echoed in her ears. She pressed her ear to the door. Inside, the sound of Ethan's soft, rhythmic snoring filled the room. Thank God. Claire carefully backed away and returned to the office. Sitting at the desk, she opened the shopping app on Ethan's laptop. In the trash folder, she recovered the deleted order. And then, the screen filled with an array of recently purchased items. Claire's breath caught. There, glinting under the screen's light, were luxury couple rings. Rings she'd never seen before, a designer purse she didn't own. Lingerie sets in styles far bolder and sexier than she'd ever wear. Claire clasped a hand over her mouth to muffle a sob. She regretted ever opening his phone. If only Ethan had changed the password. If only she hadn't looked. But she had. 5 minutes later, she wiped her tears and steadied her breathing. This wasn't the time to fall apart. She needed evidence. Ethan had hidden things this carefully. She had to be just as meticulous in uncovering them. With shaking hands, Claire began taking photos of the purchase history. Then, she recorded a video of her scrolling through it all. One detail stood out. Some orders were shipped to addresses she didn't recognize. The names and phone numbers didn't belong to her or Ethan, not even his workplace. They had to be Tessa's. Claire copied down the phone number, then searched for it on WhatsApp. An account popped up, displaying a vintage-style painting of a cottage by a stream. It was the exact same image Ethan had used to save Tessa's Google profile. Only this WhatsApp account was under a different name. Rainfall. Just for you. But in Ethan's phone, she was saved under her real name. Everything fell into place. Her life, her marriage, it was unraveling right before her eyes. One by one, Claire began deleting the items from the shopping history. Every time she clicked delete, it felt like another stab to her heart. These purchases weren't just objects, they were symbols of betrayal, of insult, of humiliation. The system automatically moved the deleted orders to the trash folder. She cleaned up the digital mess, then quietly returned to the bedroom. The sound of Ethan's snores buzzed like static in her ears. She lay back in bed. He muttered something in his sleep, called her babe, and reached out to pull her close. He always did this. Every time they argued, every time she tried to distance herself, he'd subconsciously draw her in during the night, holding her tight like nothing had ever happened. The warmth of his skin pressed against hers, his scent, familiar, masculine, wrapped around her. Any other time, it would have soothed her. But tonight, she knew. They would never go back to how things were. On reflex, Claire rolled away from him, teetering on the edge of the bed. But Ethan didn't notice. He rolled over and continued snoring, peaceful as ever. She stared at his back, familiar and yet completely alien. Claire couldn't understand. Why had he done it? She wasn't a supermodel, but she was attractive in her own right. Smart, kind, successful, a good wife. She kept their home and thrived in her career. They had met through a friend's introduction, taken their time to date, get to know each other, fall in love. Ethan had seemed grounded, respectful, handsome too, and so thoughtful in the beginning he used to say things like, "I wish I'd met you sooner." Their relationship had been a balance of love and compatibility. Getting married was the logical and emotional next step. She even remembered joking with him the day they applied for their marriage license. "If you ever fall in love with someone else, just tell me. 1 second before you cheat. Just one. That's all I ask." And he had laughed, tousled her hair, and said, "Babe, I'll be spending a lifetime just loving you. That's a promise." Now, only 1 year into their marriage, here they were. It was absurd, heartbreaking, infuriating. He didn't have to love her forever. He could have left. He could have fallen for someone else. But he never should have betrayed her like this. Not like this. The sound of his snoring faded, and in that moment, Claire felt it. The terrifying, irrational urge to wrap her fingers around his throat and make it all stop. But then, Claire Harper reminded herself, it wasn't worth ruining her life over someone like him. Still, letting Ethan off the hook so easily? That she couldn't stomach. Something inside her flared, burning deep in her chest. Even if sleep was out of reach, she knew she had to try. If she didn't rest, she wouldn't have the strength to see this through. She needed clarity, needed to stay sharp, for the long game. If she wanted to make Ethan pay the price he deserved, she had to play this smart. That night, she drifted into sleep, only to be haunted by a series of nightmares. But at least she slept. The next morning, Claire got up early. She made a simple breakfast and sat at the dining table, chewing as if the food were made of wax. She already knew this would be the start of many days wearing a mask, pretending everything was okay. The idea of divorce kept slipping into her dreams and now loomed in her waking thoughts. But how could she explain it to her parents? They were getting old. What if they couldn't handle the news? "You're up early," Ethan mumbled, eyes half shut, yawning as he shuffled into the kitchen. He tried to pull her into a hug, but Claire flinched. Her body moved instinctively to avoid him. Looking a little sheepish, Ethan kissed her forehead. "Still upset about yesterday?" His warm, low voice, once so comforting, now felt laughably fake. But Claire forced herself to smile. Any pushback might spook him. Ethan figured she wouldn't be able to resist his affection. That might have worked before he crossed the line. If he had truly loved her, protected her, she wouldn't have cared whether he was rich or poor, weak or strong. But the second he betrayed her trust, he deserved worse than hell. "Hey," he added cheerfully as he slid into a chair. "Once you get a break from work, let's celebrate our anniversary properly. Maybe start trying for a baby?" Claire's heart dropped. When they'd first married, Ethan said he wanted to wait 2 more years to focus on his career, pay off the house loan before they started a family. He didn't want her or their future kid to struggle along with him. That had moved her. She'd even helped pitch in on the mortgage for a home they didn't even live in yet. Just a pre-construction deposit at that point. And now, she was glad they hadn't had a child. Her emotions tumbled around inside her, but she couldn't let a single one show. With a half smile, she replied, "My ER department's understaffed. Dr. Shu's going on maternity leave soon, and after that she'll be breastfeeding. She won't be doing night shifts. So I probably can't even consider a baby for another 6 months." Claire could feel Ethan subtly relax at the excuse, but he tried to act annoyed. "Doesn't your hospital believe in employee rights? Now even your pregnancy has to be cleared by management." She chuckled dryly. "It's emergency care, Ethan. Everything's specialized. And it's not just me. Everyone has to report ahead of time if they plan a pregnancy." "Well, fine," he said, cracking a smile. "So, it's settled. 6 months from now, if you get pregnant, you'll stop working early, okay? I'll take care of you." "Sure," Claire replied, nodding faintly. Just 6 more months. After breakfast, she started cleaning the kitchen. Ethan followed, suddenly all hands, helping rinse the dishes, wiping counters, organizing the trash. Once upon a time, this would have warmed her heart. Now, it felt like a performance. Suddenly, he slipped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "When you finally take a break," he murmured, "I'm going to spoil you." Claire said nothing. To him, it probably looked like she hadn't quite forgiven him. But she wasn't even thinking about that anymore. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he added, his tone casual. "This 2-bedroom apartment is getting small. When we have a kid, and if my mum comes to help out, it's going to be cramped." Still focused on the dishes, Claire didn't respond, but her fingers were trembling. "What do you think?" Ethan asked. "I found a nice 4-bedroom place near the school district. We could sell this apartment and use the proceeds as a down payment." So, that was it. All the sweetness this morning, all the hugs and helpfulness, it had all been building up to this. He wanted to sell the place. The 2-bedroom apartment they currently lived in. It had been a gift from Claire's parents. A wedding dowry. A piece of her family. Because the new house Ethan bought before their wedding still wasn't ready for move-in, Claire's parents had told everyone it was his family's purchase. They just didn't want their daughter to suffer. But after a year of marriage, they stopped mentioning it, treating Ethan like their own son. To her parents, loving their son-in-law was another way to love their daughter. If the husband was happy, he'd treat their daughter well. What they forgot was that not every man is grateful. Some will take advantage, manipulate, and betray. If Claire hadn't found out Ethan was cheating, she probably would have agreed to his plan without a second thought, naively turning her premarital asset into joint property just because they were married. Because a husband and wife should stand together, right? No such thing as his or hers. And now, housing prices were soaring. A modest place already cost close to $800,000. Could they really afford another home? Not to mention, Ethan hadn't even paid off the mortgage on the other one yet. Would a bank even approve another loan? Claire bit her tongue, choking down her fury. She pretended to hesitate. Ethan had done the math. We could probably sell this place for around $500,000. That'd leave us short by about $300,000. Even if we use all our savings, we'd still need a little more. Maybe talk to your parents. Your parents, not his. He continued sweetly. It's better to move after you're pregnant anyway. Renovation dust, poor ventilation, none of that's good for a baby. And the place I found? It's perfect. It's near an elementary, middle, and high school. It's ideal for the future. He kissed her cheek like it was nothing, like he hadn't just tried to use her parents as bargaining chips. This is a big decision, Claire replied coldly, her voice clipped. I'll need to think about it. Of course, he said, grabbing his keys. Heading to work. The second he walked out the door, Claire wiped the spot where he had kissed her with visible disgust. The dishes sat untouched in the sink. She couldn't care less about them anymore. Her heart felt like it had been dropped into a bottomless pit. So that was his plan. He'd use the idea of a baby, of good schools, of a picture-perfect future to manipulate her. Hell, he even planned to involve her parents, use their kindness to close the deal. She was just lucky she'd looked through his phone the night before. Otherwise, she would have walked right into his trap, smiling while signing away everything she owned. It even made her start questioning his true intentions when they got married. Did he ever really love her? He'd said they were a great match. Her parents had expressed doubts about his finances, but she'd defended him. Naively, she'd even considered putting the apartment her parents gave her in his name to prove her love was real. She thought she was being romantic, bold. Her brother, Chris Harper, had been furious. He called her an idiot. They even fought about it. Claire thought he was just jealous of her happiness. Eventually, her parents had stepped in with a compromise. Wait 3 years after the wedding. If she still wanted to do it, they wouldn't interfere. And now reality had slapped her across the face. Ethan couldn't even wait 1 year before showing his true colours. Was she blind? Or was he just that good at hiding who he really was? Claire turned off the faucet, grabbed her bag, and drove slowly to her brother's place. She had a night shift starting at 6:30 p.m. and would be working until 8 o'clock the next morning. The day was technically hers to rest, but her mind wouldn't let her. She drove aimlessly, not ready to sit still but uncertain of what to do. Chris had tried to stay neutral when she got married. Now she stood under his apartment building, pulling at her sleeves, debating whether to tell him everything. Just then, Chris walked up, still in gym shorts and a tank top, holding a breakfast sandwich. He took one look at her and stopped joking. "What happened?" he asked seriously. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan," he cheated. Chris dropped his food. "I swear to God I'm gonna handle that son of a..." He stormed inside, grabbed a kitchen knife, and started charging toward the door. Claire flung herself at him, arms wrapped tightly around his waist. She broke into sobs, using every ounce of strength to hold him back. "Chris, don't! Please! I don't even have a home anymore. Please, don't make this worse." Chris froze in place, then dropped the knife onto the floor. He stormed around the living room, pacing furiously. After a few tense moments, he finally turned to Claire and said, "If you forgive him, don't ever call me your brother again." His voice shook, not from fear but from rage he was trying desperately to contain. Claire could see it. Chris Harper was 30, 3 years older than her, and had always been the sarcastic, teasing older sibling. A bit eccentric for their small-town community, he was still single and proudly committed to it. He always said he hadn't found anyone he could imagine building a life with. Claire used to tease him, call him scared of commitment. Only now did she realize he wasn't scared. He was just the sanest person in the world. Chris could pick on her all day, but if anyone else tried, not a chance. "You didn't sign that apartment over to him, did you?" he asked sharply. Claire shook her head. "Good," he muttered. "At least you've still got some sense." He tugged her down onto the couch, grabbed a tissue to wipe her tears, and said gruffly, "Crying won't fix anything. You want to make him pay." Claire's throat burned. Her fists clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms. The pain grounded her. "I'm gonna drag him straight to hell," she whispered, her voice trembling with conviction. "Chris, I need your help." Chris nodded, deadly serious. She could count on one hand the number of times she'd seen him this focused. "Oh, and don't say anything to Mom and Dad yet," Claire added. That evening, after her night shift at the hospital, she texted Ethan to let him know she'd be visiting her parents for a couple of days. Ethan, of course, was thrilled. He assumed she was going to talk to them about co-signing for the new house. What he didn't know was that Claire was planning how to destroy him. Chris may have seemed carefree, but when he committed to something, he went all in. His small business had weathered economic slumps and even the worst of the pandemic. He had resources, connections, and a sharp mind that moved fast. So when he placed a thick stack of documents in front of her, Claire was stunned by how quickly he had pulled it all together. Chloe Tennyson lived in East Hollow, a town just outside of Springfield. She had one older sister and a younger brother. At age 4, she was given away to a distant relative as an adopted daughter, another casualty of a family that favored sons over daughters. Only when she was grown did her biological parents take her back in. Her personality, according to Chris's intel, was anxious, highly sensitive, and intensely vindictive. She constantly sacrificed herself for her parents and brother, as if suffering made her feel valued. She lived her life on her own terms and didn't care what others thought. Currently, she was engaged. Yes, engaged. The file even included her fiancé's name, phone number, and social media profiles. Claire remembered now. Ethan had mentioned once that Chloe came from a tough background. She didn't go to college and had struggled a lot when she first joined the hospital. He said she often made mistakes and leaned on him for help. At the time, Claire had even encouraged him to be patient. "She's just trying to find her footing," she had said. "We were the same when we started, fresh out of med school, totally clueless." Ethan had nodded, then spoken about Chloe in passing. He called her hardworking, kind, and sincere. Claire remembered feeling relieved. If Ethan had good relationships with co-workers, he'd be happier at work, less stress, fewer arguments at home. Eventually, he stopped bringing her up, and Claire didn't think anything of it, until now. Until that night at the hospital, when she saw him wiping Chloe's tears and tucking her hair behind her ear, like she was something precious. Chloe might have been a tragic figure, but that didn't justify her invading someone else's marriage. Claire flipped through the files, fingers trembling. One document caught her eye: Chloe Tennyson's medical records. Claire accessed the outpatient medical records system. Though their neighborhood was considered small, the hospital where she worked, Westbrook General, was the most reputable in the area. It was the first stop for anyone seeking treatment. She tapped the print button, adjusted the time frame to go back a full year, and entered the name Chloe Tennyson. A flood of records appeared. Claire sorted them by age and insurance number, filtering out irrelevant entries and printing those that matched. In that moment, she felt a wave of gratitude that the ER department was allowed to access outpatient files. Due to the urgent and unpredictable nature of emergency care, only her department and the outpatient clinic on the second floor had full record access. She combed through the documents and noticed Chloe had visited OB/GYN frequently for menstrual pain and ENT for recurring nosebleeds. Oddly, the appointments for those two issues were often close together. Then, something clicked. She remembered Ethan's daily melatonin use every single night. A near-perfect revenge plan began to take shape in her mind. Claire's eyes narrowed. She was going to make them pay, crush them both so completely they'd never crawl back out. As soon as her shift ended, she didn't waste a second. She went to meet someone. His name was Travis Holt, Chloe's current fiancé. Claire had seen his file. He was just as the paperwork described, a mild-mannered, blue-collar technician, unassuming and sincere. When Claire laid all the evidence on the table, Travis's expression twisted into disbelief. "You're lying," he muttered. "There's no way Chloe would ever do something like this." Claire offered a sad smile, one part sympathy for the man being cheated on, the other part bitter at how familiar it all felt. "She's probably in my house right now," Claire said softly. "You've got a camera?" Travis asked, uncertain. "No," she admitted. "I wasn't prepared for that." "So this is all just speculation?" His voice wavered, but his stance remained defensive. "I trust her. I'm not going to doubt my fiancé because of some stranger throwing accusations around." Claire didn't argue. Instead, she pulled out her phone and opened her Smart Scale app, the one that tracked body composition data. Skipping the metrics on fat percentage and metabolism, she tapped into the weight history. Last night, 8:45 p.m., 103 pounds. 11:46 p.m., 107 pounds. This morning, 7:30 a.m., 98 pounds. They'd definitely eaten late, then done something. "If you still don't believe me," she said calmly, "you can call her." Travis hesitated. Then he picked up his phone and dialed. He even turned on speaker. A soft, syrupy voice answered. "Hey babe, it's the weekend, right? I miss you. Can we meet today?" Claire watched Travis carefully. He looked like he wanted to believe everything was fine. "I thought you were sick?" he asked, voice tense. "I could bring you some medicine." A pause. Then came the fake coughs. No, it's fine. I went home to my parents. I'll come see you Monday, okay?" Claire saw the realization hit him like a truck. "She said she went home," he murmured, staring blankly. "Not that she's already there." He looked up at Claire. "Why would you keep a smart scale in your house anyway?" "I thought I'd be getting pregnant soon," Claire replied softly. "Wanted to track my health. I wanted to give our child the best chance possible, but apparently, your fiancé had other plans." As she spoke, she pinched her thigh discreetly to squeeze out a few tears. If she was going to play the part of the devastated wife trying to save her marriage, she was going to sell it well. Society forgives cheating husbands all the time, but a cheated man? He rarely forgives. "Take me there," Travis said. Claire's face remained solemn, but inside, she was grinning. Humans were strange creatures. No one wanted to believe they were being betrayed, until they were forced to. And once the truth snapped into place, curiosity and vengeance would always drive them further than pride ever could. She unlocked the front door. What she saw inside would be burned into her memory forever. Chloe, wearing Claire's dress. Both of them flushed and dishevelled, clothes askew, clearly mid-act on Claire's own damn couch. All four of their eyes met. Claire had braced herself for this. She'd even reassured Travis earlier that they were just coming to take his fiancée home. But nothing could prepare her for the rage that exploded at the sight of them together, so shameless, so disgusting, in her own living room. Ethan yanked up his shorts. Chloe looked like a deer in headlights, frozen in place. Claire didn't even have time to react, because Travis had already launched forward. Smack! The slap landed hard across Chloe's face. "You said you were sick," he shouted. "You said you went home." Chloe stammered. Wait! This isn't what it looks like." She tried to fix her dress, but her voice kept cracking. "I was forced, he made me. This is my first time." One word. Forced. A trigger. Travis exploded in fury and went straight for Ethan, fists flying, kicks landing wherever they could. Ethan, caught off guard, stumbled backward, face burning with shame, but quickly recovered and started fighting back. The two men were locked in a wild brawl, punching, kicking, shoving each other into furniture. As the fight escalated, they began grabbing anything within reach in the living room, turning the space into chaos. Glass from the coffee table shattered with a sharp crack as it hit the floor. Claire pulled out her phone and began recording. She did feel a twinge of regret. Yesterday, she had carefully charged the audio recorder and had secretly turned it on while still downstairs. But she hadn't managed to capture the explosive moment when she first opened the door. Everything had happened so fast, she forgot to start filming right away. Now, Travis Holt looked like a furious animal, eyes bloodshot, fists flying. Even though Chloe Tennyson was clinging to him, he had the upper hand. He was younger, stronger, and powered by pure rage. Ethan Lang had no chance against him. Chloe tried to intervene, flailing between them, first grabbing Travis, then Ethan, only managing to get herself scratched and shoved in the chaos. She had caused all of this, but now, no matter whose side she took, she was wrong. Soon, the living room was wrecked. The door was wide open, the sounds of the scuffle drawing in a curious crowd of neighbours. People gathered in the hallway, whispering and filming on their phones. Someone even called the police. Eventually, both men grew exhausted. The fight ended not with resolution, but because they simply couldn't go on. Travis was the victor, but he didn't look pleased, just heaving with fury, staring at Chloe like he wanted to rip her apart. She cowered in the corner, curled into a ball, crying like a broken child. Ethan looked defeated. His lips parted to catch his breath, his face bruised and swollen, his shirt torn, his limbs scraped, yet somehow, his nose had come through unscathed. Claire had casually told Travis on the way here that she'd seen plenty of fights at the ER. She told him if he ever wanted to hit someone and not get charged with a felony, go for superficial pain and avoid permanent damage. "Stay away from the nose and eardrums," she'd said. Now, she stopped the recording on her phone and stared coldly at the wreckage. It ended too soon. Travis hadn't hit hard enough. Ethan still didn't look like he was in enough pain to match the betrayal he inflicted. What surprised Claire, though, was Chloe's behaviour. She had seemed weaker than expected. Perhaps it was because Travis's presence threw her off. Maybe without him, Chloe would have shown her true colours. Once the tension settled, Chloe finally lifted her head. Her face was a mess, streaked with blood, snot, and mascara. She looked pathetic, and yet Claire couldn't help but find it both comical and repulsive. Claire smirked. Gone was the innocent, bunny look. Chloe's eyes now burned with fury and venom. Stumbling forward, she growled. "This was all your plan, wasn't it?" Claire feigned innocence, blinking wide. "You seduced my husband, wrecked my marriage, and even had the nerve to lie in my bed, and now you're accusing me of setting a trap." Behind her back, Claire's hand curled into a tight fist. If Chloe laid a finger on her, she'd knock her teeth out. She kept up the act, looking afraid, waiting to see if Ethan would intervene. He didn't. He stood there, still, frozen. Even worse, he looked at Chloe with pity. Claire's heart turned to stone. That was all she needed to see. The man she once loved, who promised to cherish her forever, was gone. Fine, she thought. If this is how it ends, I'm not holding back. "You bitch!" Chloe screamed, lunging forward. "Ethan should have divorced you a long time ago." Claire had seen it coming. Smack! Her open palm cracked across Chloe's cheek. Then came the left hand. Another slap. Harder. "That's for destroying someone else's family," Claire said coldly. "And still acting like you're the victim? Pathetic." From the hallway, someone muttered, "What a shameless homewrecker." Chloe staggered back, clutching her face. Her cheek ballooned red and swollen like a pig's snout. Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but humiliation. One more wrong word, and Claire knew the neighbours outside would spit on her too. "You want more shame, Chloe?" Travis spat, grabbing her wrist. "Let's talk about traps. You think they set you up? You walked into this with both eyes open." He pulled her so hard, she lost her balance and crashed to the floor. "They were all ganging up on me," Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking. "You don't see it? They tricked me." But her voice didn't sound angry anymore. "Don't let that bitch Claire manipulate you anymore. I've already suffered so much. How can you turn your back on me too? You just hit me." Chloe writhed on the floor, her voice hoarse and broken, eyes brimming with betrayal. She clung to Travis like he was her last hope. Ethan Lang stepped forward, pointed straight at her, and shouted, "I told you, didn't I? I told you not to seduce me, not to come between me and my wife. From the very beginning, I only ever loved my wife." Chloe's mouth fell open. She was too stunned to even cry. Outside, the distant wail of a police siren blared closer. From the hallway, neighbours were still muttering and cursing, calling Chloe a homewrecker, a shameless side chick. Others turned on Ethan, calling him a sorry excuse for a man. A few murmured sympathy for Claire. And Travis? Well, he was the guy who got cheated on. What a mess. With her world crumbling around her, Chloe froze. Pale as a ghost, she scrambled to escape. Not so fast. Claire extended her leg. Chloe tripped hard and hit the floor with a sickening thud. She looked like a mangy dog caught stealing scraps. "Trying to run?" Claire sneered. "In your dreams." Chloe looked at her with a mixture of anger and humiliation, but had no choice. She got to her feet, trembling, and unzipped the dress, Claire's dress, that she had dared to wear. Claire snatched it from her and threw it in her face with icy calm. "Don't let anything you wore here touch my house again. It disgusts me. Trash belongs in the garbage." The cops arrived and took all 4 of them to the station. Each of them gave their statement. Eventually, they agreed to settle the matter as a civil dispute. They signed the papers. Then, one by one, they left. But word, spread fast. The neighborhood buzzed with gossip. People stared when they passed Claire and Ethan on the sidewalk. They whispered behind cupped hands, some in pity for Claire, others tearing Ethan apart with venomous tongues. The judgment of the public was harsh and sharp. Claire said nothing, but Ethan's face turned blotchy red and then ghostly pale as the shame and stares pierced him like knives. Once they stepped inside the house, he collapsed to his knees. He clutched her legs and begged, "Claire, I'm sorry, please. It was Chloe, she came on to me. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Please, don't leave me. We still love each other, right?" Claire looked down at the pathetic man grovelling on their floor and let out a soft laugh. "Let's get a divorce." "No, no, no. I won't sign. Claire, please. I know I was wrong. I gave in to temptation. But tell me, what marriage doesn't have its problems? We can get through this. Let's look to the future, please." Claire crouched down and slowly peeled his fingers off her ankle. "Then why did you do it?" she asked quietly. Ethan was sweating, his bruised face twitching, still trying to salvage something. In a sudden show of desperation, he pulled out his phone, recorded a voice message and sent it, full of sharp, cruel rejection, then deleted every trace of Chloe's contact information. "There, she's out of my life, forever." He did it right in front of her, acting like it was some grand gesture. And for a moment, Claire was almost impressed by how swiftly he flipped. But no, she remembered too well. Just last night, he had still been caressing Chloe, whispering to her in this very house. Not 2 hours ago, when Chloe lunged at her, Ethan didn't say a word, didn't stop her, didn't protect his wife. And now, with divorce on the table, suddenly he's drawing hard lines and tossing Chloe aside? Was this real regret, or just a ploy? She knew the answer. He hadn't touched a penny of the premarital assets her parents gave her. Her savings were still hers. The mortgage on the condo he bought before they married? Still unpaid. He was calculating, weighing his odds, playing whatever side gave him the best deal. And deep down he probably thought, as many men did, that cheating could be forgiven. That kneeling and crying would be enough. That his wife would eventually soften, play along, pretend it never happened. He thought he knew her. Claire wanted to see it with her own eyes. Ethan crawling through hell, paying for every bit of pain he caused her. And what happened today? That was just the beginning. Bang! Claire shut the door behind her and walked into the guest room. Catching them red-handed had been a spur-of-the-moment decision. When it came to cheating, she always believed the blame fell squarely on Ethan. Even if Chloe came on to him, all he had to do was say no. One hand alone doesn't make a sound. But Chloe Monroe? She had crossed every line. She had the audacity to friend Claire on WhatsApp, then posted a private status visible only to Claire. A photo of her lying on Claire's own bed, curled up beside the man Claire knew better than anyone. It wasn't even a full shot, just his back, but that was all it took. It was Ethan. The caption? "Stolen tastes sweeter." This wasn't about love. It was revenge. Chloe wanted payback for that moment days earlier, when Claire had confidently pulled Ethan away by the arm. Chloe must have felt abandoned, discarded. Maybe it even triggered old wounds, memories of being left behind by her own family. She lashed out in the only way she knew how. While Claire worked the night shift, Chloe snuck into her house, slipped into her dress, laid in her bed, and slept with her husband, then flaunted it. But Claire wouldn't give her the satisfaction. That's why she tracked down Travis, Chloe's fiancé. She never showed him the post. She didn't want him flying off the handle and blowing the whole plan. Seeing it happen, that would leave a mark. That kind of betrayal, when witnessed firsthand, scars deeper than any rumor ever could. Because the cruelest wounds are always inflicted by the people closest to you. Cold violence is like a dull blade. It doesn't kill you, but it makes you wish you were dead. Ethan changed. Overnight, he was shockingly diligent. He cleaned the wrecked living room spotless, as if trying to erase everything that had happened. Claire had to admit, it looked even cleaner than before. He cooked her an elaborate breakfast, full of nutrients, flavorful. She didn't say a word, not a single compliment. She ate silently, face stone cold. And when she was done, she left the kitchen without a glance. From that point on, they slept in separate rooms. In their brief conversations, Claire kept her words to the bare minimum. If one word could end the conversation, she wouldn't waste a second word. Ethan asked for time off work, said he wanted to make things right, spend time with her. Was it really about her, or was it because he was too embarrassed to show his bruised face at the office? Claire didn't care. She kept going to work. The love she had for him? Gone. All she had left was her career. That would never betray her. Still, she kept watching him, observing the changes in his behavior, and more importantly, in his body. Knowing she had a sweet tooth, Ethan started cooking more and more sweet dishes after work. Sweet and sour pork, glazed meatballs, honeyed ribs, braised fish. She'd nibble at a few bites in silence, cold as ever. But the more she tasted, the more her expression softened. Just a little. And Ethan, idiot that he was, mistook this for hope, for forgiveness. He began to notice a pattern. The more he cooked, the better she seemed to treat him, especially when he finished his plate. He thought she was warming back up, but something was off. The bruises on his face were healing, yet his lips were constantly cracked. He couldn't sleep. Melatonin barely helped. He'd sweat through his clothes at night, sometimes wake up in a panic. Even though the temperature in both the living room and the bedroom were perfect, sometimes he even ran low-grade fevers. His memory got foggy. He started misplacing things. The first time Claire truly spoke to Ethan again after filing for divorce was because he forgot to turn off the gas valve. Then there was the razor. He couldn't find it for days. Turned out, it was sitting on the bathroom windowsill. One night, after another long night shift, Claire came home. She pulled out her keys, only to realize the front door was just shut, not locked. She dialed his number immediately and let him have it. Ethan wanted to argue, but in the end, he just let out a helpless sigh and muttered, "I'll be more careful next time." Claire watched as he carried groceries inside, not daring to say a word. He just silently entered the kitchen and started preparing dinner. Lately, Ethan had developed an unusual rash all over his body, including the most private areas. It itched terribly. He went to a dermatologist and got allergy tests done, but the results came back clean. He wasn't allergic to anything. Even though he'd taken multiple antihistamines, the condition came and went unpredictably. Weirder still, when he stopped taking the medication, the rash sometimes vanished, only to come back a few days later, sometimes with a low-grade fever. The discomfort, insomnia, and anxiety that followed robbed him of rest and appetite. Claire noticed how he was getting thinner by the day, his face drawn and haggard, and that gave her an odd sense of satisfaction. "Are you still seeing Chloe Monroe?" she asked casually over dinner, picking at her food. "You don't trust me?" Ethan snapped, slamming down his chopsticks. His eyes were furious, but empty, like the light inside him had gone out. "That doesn't matter," Claire smiled coldly. "Just don't give me whatever it is you might have." The smirk on her lips was sharp, almost cruel. "2 days ago I saw Chloe in the ER," she added casually. "Nosebleed. Out of nowhere. A lot of blood." Just that one line, and Ethan's face changed colour completely. "I'm done eating. I'm going to play some games." He stormed off to his office and didn't come back out for a long time. Later that night, with the house quiet, Claire checked his browser history. Google searches like sudden night sweats, persistent mouth ulcers, itchy skin no cause, sexually transmitted diseases, symptoms, early signs of HIV. How long is incubation period? Is it treatable? She chuckled. Paranoia is like opening Pandora's box. Once you start to fear an illness, it never lets go. Anxiety, dread, despair, they'll haunt you until they break you. And when a seed of doubt is planted in someone's heart, no matter how many times they try to kill it, it always finds a way to bloom. And Claire, she'd water it, she'd nurture it, she'd make sure that fear consumed him. Because the incubation period of some infections is anywhere between 6 weeks to 3 months. The clock was ticking. The next day, after her shift, Claire noticed fresh scratch marks on Ethan's neck. Looked like he'd gone to confront Chloe. They probably argued, maybe even fought. Claire had seen a new photo Chloe posted on WhatsApp. Just a hint, a half-hidden face under newly cut short hair, like she was hiding something. The caption? Starting over. How ironic! Bitter words, crude jabs, photos of her tangled up with Ethan sent late at night. Chloe had been trying to taunt her. She and Ethan had clearly continued hooking up in secret. And once it starts, it never stops. Claire recalled the day she told Ethan she wanted a divorce. He dropped to his knees, sobbing, begging. And now? She found it laughable. Men always spouted the same lies. All that pleading, it was just a stalling tactic, a way to keep her from cutting things off. If she didn't divorce him, she'd be doing a disservice to Ethan's award-worthy performance, and Chloe's late-night content drops. Ethan was scared, terrified he'd caught something. That paranoia drove him straight to Chloe to settle things. Whatever happened between them, it must have ended ugly. Claire smirked, probably explained why Chloe posted that picture, hiding half her face. Feeling satisfied, Claire decided to cook dinner. Sweet, sour, spicy, salty, every flavour on the spectrum. That night, the weather forecast predicted thunderstorms. After eating, Ethan grew visibly uncomfortable. He was hot, kept fidgeting, drinking water, adjusting the AC. "I feel stifled. Must be the storm coming," he muttered. Claire, scrolling on her phone, didn't even glance up. "Can you sit still?" she asked, her voice flat. Ethan looked increasingly uneasy. Sweat dripped down his face, even though the AC was blasting. She went into her room and came out in a long nightgown. Tonight, she would see his room. Since his mystery condition started, Ethan's libido had taken a nosedive. Even when he tried to initiate intimacy lately, she could tell he wasn't really into it. Just going through the motions, desperate for her forgiveness. He wanted to win her back, but Claire? She was just getting started. Claire could have shut Ethan down completely, just by saying, "Did you get this anxious when you were with Chloe too?" "I'm tired. I'm going to sleep," she added coldly, and turned away. Ethan's face twisted in frustration. Without another word, he went into the bedroom. But the bitterness in his eyes betrayed more than just irritation. He was ashamed of himself. When Claire came into the room later, he was already lying in bed, tossing and turning. Clearly, he couldn't sleep. She faked deep sleep, keeping her breathing slow and steady. Throughout the night, Ethan kept getting up, either to use the bathroom or to gulp down cold water. Eventually, his breathing slowed. He was finally asleep. Suddenly, the entire bedroom lit up white. A crack of thunder roared like a monster overhead, waking Ethan with a jolt. He sat up, gasping for air, pale as a ghost, drenched in cold sweat, like he'd just had a nightmare. Another lightning bolt flashed. The storm outside pounded against the windows. Ethan shivered. He turned and looked at Claire, who continued her performance, breathing slowly, pretending to sleep. Meanwhile, his eyes stayed locked in place, blank, dazed, lost. Outside, the rain poured harder. She knew that was it. Whatever thread of composure he had left had finally snapped. This stormy night had broken him. The next day, Ethan came down with a fever. Sometimes he was lucid, sometimes he mumbled nonsense. Claire offered to take him to the hospital, but he refused to go. Claire didn't argue, she agreed. Because her goal wasn't to treat him, it was to document him. She wanted it on record, a certified diagnosis, a sealed file at the psychiatric department. Foundation laid. After all, bipolar disorder wasn't the end of the world, and Claire was a doctor. She knew both the therapeutic approaches and pharmacological options better than anyone. The psychiatrist handed over the prescription. "Whether he takes the meds is up to you," he said, nodding at Claire. "Colleagues like you two usually know what to do." Claire went along with the doctor's suggestions, reluctantly, or at least she made it seem that way. In truth, she was thrilled. She wanted to laugh out loud, but forced herself to hold it in. She filed for a leave of absence on Ethan's behalf, telling his company he was experiencing recurring fevers and that the local hospital couldn't pinpoint the cause. Given the sensitivity around illness during this pandemic era, the HR department was quick to agree. "No need to rush back," they reassured. "Take the time you need." But Claire had her own reasons. This was to scare Chloe. After they returned from the hospital, but before the results for syphilis and HIV were in, Ethan's condition only deteriorated further. One moment he'd be skipping and singing around the house. The next he was muttering to himself in a low, deadpan voice, eyes vacant, skin clammy, like a walking corpse. Sometimes he begged for his meds. Other times he'd chuck the pills across the room. Once, he even tried climbing out the window. Claire had no choice but to take his medical records and admit him to Amwell Behavioural Hospital, the local psychiatric department. After all, bipolar disorder wasn't the end of the world, and Claire was a doctor. She knew both the therapeutic approaches and pharmacological options better than anyone. The psychiatrist handed over the prescription. "Whether he takes the meds is up to you," he said, nodding at Claire. "Colleagues like you two usually know what to do." Claire went along with the doctor's suggestions, reluctantly, or at least she made it seem that way. In truth, she was thrilled. She wanted to laugh out loud, but forced herself to hold it in. She filed for a leave of absence on Ethan's behalf, telling his company he was experiencing recurring fevers and that the local hospital couldn't pinpoint the cause. Given the sensitivity around illness during this pandemic era, the HR department was quick to agree. "No need to rush back," they reassured. "Take the time you need." But Claire had her own reasons. This was to scare Chloe. After they returned from the hospital, but before the results for syphilis and HIV were in, Ethan's condition only deteriorated further. One moment he'd be skipping and singing around the house, the next he was muttering to himself, in a low, deadpan voice, eyes vacant, skin clammy, like a walking corpse. Sometimes, he begged for his meds. Other times, he'd chuck the pills across the room. Once, he even tried climbing out the window. Claire had no choice but to take his medical records and admit him to Anwell Behavioral Hospital, the local psychiatric facility. Right after she dropped him off, she called his mom. That's when she learned the truth. Ethan's father had also suffered from mental illness. When Ethan was 10, he witnessed his father hang himself. Claire didn't believe in destiny or curses. She was a rational woman, a doctor. Yes, certain psychiatric disorders could run in families, but bipolar disorder wasn't always inherited. And even if it was, if Ethan had remained loyal, if he'd never betrayed her and destroyed their marriage, she would have stood by him. She would have sold their house, their car, traveled the world with him if that's what it took to get him better. But a cheating bastard, he wasn't worth a single ounce of her compassion. The hospital called Claire multiple times afterward, telling her Ethan wanted to see her. She never went. She was busy finalizing the divorce. Because of Ethan's mental health diagnosis, the legal process was a bit more complicated. But she was prepared. She had documented everything. Every message, every hotel receipt, every late-night selfie Chloe had sent her. The timeline was tight, and every shred of evidence was admissible in court. There were videos, Ethan's search history, his physical fights, the footage from neighbors, the report from the police station. She even submitted a copy of the psychiatric evaluation and a video of her fearful reaction when he had an episode. All of it helped. The court awarded most of the marital assets to Claire. Ethan was granted a minor share, citing his mental health condition. More than enough to keep him there for a very long time. One day, after the divorce was finalized, Claire decided to visit. She brought the negative HIV test result with her, just for the drama. The doctors told her that Ethan had stopped eating altogether. He sat curled up in the corner of his room now, scratching at the paint on the walls with dirty fingernails, muttering to himself. "I'm not sick. I'm not sick." In just a few months, he looked like a ghost of his former self. Claire smiled faintly. "Of course you're not sick. What illness could you possibly have?" Her voice was laced with venom. At the sound of her voice, Ethan looked up. His eyes lit up for a second. Recognition then. Fury. "This was all your doing, wasn't it?" he barked. Claire spread her hands and gave him a mock innocent shrug. "Who, me?" He lunged at her like a wild animal, but the security glass between them held firm. "Then why? Why do I feel like this?" he screamed. "Is it AIDS? Am I dying?" She held up the lab report. "Negative," she said, waving it slowly in front of him. "You're clean." Ethan froze, then started muttering again. Claire narrowed her eyes, stepped forward, and answered coolly. "Every illness has a cause, right? Too much sugar causes inflammation. Inflammation leads to breakouts, ulcers. You drink too much water because you ate too much salt. That's basic physiology." "Then why the fever? The sweating? The forgetfulness?" he asked, desperate. She smirked. "Every night, turn the AC off. We're on the 9th floor. Cross-ventilation from the windows. Perfect for catching a cold. As for your forgetfulness..." She leaned in a little closer, voice like silk. "I rearranged all the furniture in the apartment, including the gas valve in the kitchen." She paused, let it sink in, then chuckled. "Oh, and that rash? Not my doing. I had nothing to do with that part." In truth, melatonin had limited effects on chronic insomnia. As for Claire Newton, the constant, unexplained nosebleeds, no doctor could identify the cause. But Harper Lane said nothing. She wouldn't tell Ryan Mason that there's a rare condition called nasal endometriosis, where uterine tissue grows in the nasal cavity. Just like the uterus, it bleeds cyclically during menstruation. But Ryan was genuinely diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Harper smiled triumphantly. "You manipulative psycho. I'll destroy you. I'm not sick, let me out." Ryan screamed from inside the psychiatric ward, slamming his fists against the glass until his knuckles bled. "Someone help! Patient D32 is losing control," a nurse shouted. Harper feigned concern, watching calmly as a nurse rushed over and injected him with a sedative. His struggle slowly stilled, his eyes fluttered shut. Silence. Walking out of the hospital, Harper was humming cheerfully. Ill or not, it didn't matter. No one would believe a psychiatric patient who kept screaming, "I'm not sick!" A few days later, after work, Harper happened to see a man carrying a limp woman into the ER, shouting, "Doctor, please help! She drank pesticide." From just one glance, Harper recognized him. Ethan Cole, Claire Newton's fiancé. She pulled on a mask and quietly peered into the emergency room. There was no mistaking it. The girl, foaming at the mouth, barely breathing, reeking of acrid poison. It was Claire. From Ethan's frantic rambling, Harper learned that after the cheating scandal, he had broken off the engagement and demanded the return of the bridal deposit. Only then did he discover Claire had used that money to put down a house for her younger brother. With the deposit gone, Claire's standing in her family collapsed. Now she was the daughter who brought shame, the homewrecker, the useless sister who couldn't even help her brother. A complete fall from grace. Conveniently, Ryan had taken time off from work, so Claire, struggling with her symptoms, began believing she had some terminal illness. She became obsessed with her health, returning to the hospital repeatedly to get her blood tested. Unable to accept her new reality, she began begging Ethan to take her back. When he refused, she threatened to kill herself. Today, she followed through with the threat and swallowed pesticide. Behind the ER doors, the doctors and nurses were fighting to save her, whether Claire survived or not. That, Harper thought coldly, was no longer her concern. Dear listeners, today's emotional love story comes to a close. If it touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel to support our team in bringing more tender, unforgettable stories to life. Wishing you endless joy, gentle days, and a heart always filled with love. Until we meet again in the next story, take care and stay inspired.